Everyone in the capital thinks I'm a ruined man. That's the version of me that's been circulating for 3 months. Aiden Voss, former A-rank adventurer, stripped of his guild license, abandoned by his party, broken engagements trailing behind him like wreckage. The tavern version of my story goes like this. I got arrogant, overreached, lost a critical mission, and the 3 women who'd been engaged to me came to their senses and left before my failure dragged them down. It's clean. It's simple. It makes sense to people who need things to make sense quickly. Almost none of it is true. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with this morning. But because this morning is where everything finally cracked open, and because the woman sitting across from me at a scratched wooden table in a guild outpost 60 miles from the capital is the reason any of this matters. Her name is Ren. She's a supply runner for the Frontier Aid Corps, the people who deliver medicine, food, and repair materials to villages too remote for regular guild routes. She has calloused hands, short-cropped dark hair, a scar across her left knuckle from a crate that split in transit, and a way of looking at you like she's already decided whether you're worth her time and is just waiting for you to confirm it. She isn't beautiful the way the capital defines beauty. She's beautiful the way a well-built bridge is beautiful. Functional, sturdy, exactly where it needs to be. I didn't notice her for years. She was a background fixture at the guild hall. Always loading wagons, always checking manifests, always there and never seen. I walked past her hundreds of times. I'm not proud of that. But it's the truth. And the truth is the only currency I have left. Ren is the person who pulled me off the floor of a roadside way station 3 months ago when I had no license, no party, no money, and a fever that was 2 days away from killing me. She loaded me into her supply wagon like I was another crate of bandages, drove 14 hours through rain, and dropped me at a healer's clinic in a village I'd never heard of. When I woke up and asked her why, she said, "Because you were dying and I had a wagon." That's Ren. No performance, no agenda, just action, applied where it was needed. But I'll come back to her first. I need to tell you about today, because today, 3 women I used to be engaged to showed up in this outpost town, one after another. And each one of them believes a different lie about what happened to me, and each one of them wants something I no longer have the desire to give. The first arrived at 10 in the morning, Celeste Hartwell, the daughter of Baron Hartwell, one of the guild's primary financiers. She and I were engaged for political alignment. Her family wanted a high-ranking adventurer connected to their name, and my guildmaster pushed the match as a way to secure Hartwell funding for frontier operations. Celeste is porcelain pale, immaculately dressed at all times, and speaks in a way that makes you feel like you're being interviewed even when she's asking about the weather. She walked into the outpost hall where I was sorting medical supply crates with Ren, looked at my worn coat and field boots, and her expression flickered between pity and calculation. "Aiden." She said it like she was reading a name off a headstone. "I've been looking for you." "You found me." She glanced at Ren, dismissed her in half a second, and turned back to me. "I need to talk to you. Privately." Ren didn't react. She kept stacking crates. I told Celeste we could talk outside. We stood in the cold air near the supply wagons, and she launched into it almost immediately. "I know what happened wasn't entirely your fault. My father has received new information about the Ashenmore mission. The guild's report was incomplete." She paused, watching for a reaction. I gave her nothing. "Aiden." "Oh, the Hartwell engagement was dissolved based on information that now appears to have been manipulated. My father is willing to revisit the arrangement." "Revisit it?" "On adjusted terms, of course, given your current situation." "Adjusted terms, meaning worse for me, better for them." She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to renegotiate from a position of strength because someone had told her father that the story about my failure wasn't accurate. And if the truth came out, being connected to me might become valuable again. "What new information?" I asked. She hesitated. "That's still being reviewed." "Then we don't have anything to talk about, Celeste." Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to this. The Aiden she'd been engaged to would have been grateful for the second chance. Yet he would have agreed to adjusted terms because he'd have been terrified of falling further. She was banking on desperation. She found something else. "You're making a mistake," she said. "I've made several. This isn't one of them." She left. I went back inside. Ren was labeling crates with a grease pencil. "Old friend," she said without looking up. "Old contract." She nodded, and we kept working. She didn't ask me to explain. She never does. That's one of the things I've learned about Ren in 3 months. She doesn't demand your story. She lets you carry it until you're ready to set it down. Now let me tell you what Celeste doesn't know. The Ashenmore mission was supposed to be a standard high-tier dungeon clear. My party enters, clears the corruption, secures the area for settlement expansion. 5 people. And I was the strategist and field commander. We'd done dozens of these, but the intelligence we received from the guild was wrong, not outdated. Wrong. The threat level was classified as B+, when the actual concentration of corruption was A class or higher. We walked into a kill box. 2 of my party members were critically injured in the first chamber. I pulled the team out. Standard protocol. If field conditions don't match the briefing, you retreat and reevaluate. There is no shame in that. Every adventurer knows it, but the guild didn't report it that way. The report filed by the mission coordinator, a man named Greaves, who I'll get to shortly, stated that I abandoned the objective due to personal hesitation and demonstrated command failure under pressure. The report recommended my license be suspended pending review. The review never came. The suspension became permanent. 3 engagements dissolved within the week, not because the women involved investigated, because the story reached their families, and their families made decisions. Celeste's father pulled out because the Hartwell name couldn't be linked to a disgraced adventurer. He didn't call me. He sent a notarized letter. I didn't fight it. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the energy. I was still treating the injuries I'd sustained, pulling my team out, and the 2 party members I'd saved had already been reassigned to new squads by the time I was mobile again. No one asked me for my version. The guild's report was official. Official means true. That's how institutions work. The version with the seal on it wins. The second fiancé arrived at 1 in the afternoon, Margot Devereaux, and a healer from a noble family that ran a network of restoration clinics. Our engagement was personal, not political. We'd been together for a year, and she was the closest thing I'd had to a real partner. Margot was gentle, thoughtful, and completely unable to function outside the approval of her family. When her mother told her I was finished, she ended things in a letter that was 3 pages of apology and 0 pages of resistance. She looked worse than the last time I'd seen her. Thinner, paler, she stood in the outpost doorway like she was afraid the floor would swallow her. Aiden, I came to say I'm sorry. Okay. I didn't know the report was false. I didn't know Greaves. What do you know about Greaves? She faltered. There are rumors. People are saying the mission report was altered. That Greaves had a reason to want you removed. What reason? I don't know. I just heard. From who? She looked down. My mother heard it at a guild dinner. She told me to come find you. She said, if the report is overturned, our families should reconnect. There it was. Not sorry. Repositioning. Margot, I said, your mother told you to come here? She thought. Your mother read the room, realized the story might change, and sent you to secure the asset before someone else did. That's not an apology. That's an acquisition. Her eyes welled. I almost felt bad. Almost. Because I remembered the letter she'd sent me, the one that said, I can't be with someone the guild has lost faith in. She didn't say she'd lost faith. She said the guild had, as if her love was contingent on institutional approval. So I waited for you to call, I said. For 3 weeks after the suspension, I waited. You sent a letter. I know. You could have come. You could have asked me what happened. I was afraid. Of what? Of what my family would say. That sentence is the most honest thing Margot has ever said to me. And it's also the reason we will never be anything again. Because she just told me, clearly and without evasion, that her family's opinion outweighs her own judgment, and I can't build a life next to someone whose foundation is someone else's approval. She left, crying. I watched her carriage pull away through the outpost window. Ren appeared beside me and placed a tin cup of tea on the windowsill. Second old friend? Second old contract. She almost smiled. Almost. Now let me tell you about Greaves. Commander Darius Greaves was the guild's regional mission coordinator, the man responsible for assigning threat assessments, approving deployment plans, and filing post-mission reports. He was also, as I learned 2 weeks after my suspension, the person who had authorized the Ashenmore intelligence despite receiving updated survey data from the Frontier Aid Course, Ren's course, that clearly indicated the corruption levels were far higher than the B+ rating. Ren told me this, not in a dramatic reveal, not with fanfare. She mentioned it the second week I was recovering in the village while she was reviewing her core delivery logs. Ashenmore. she said, flipping through a ledger. We flagged that zone 4 months before your mission. Sent the updated readings to the Guild's coordination office. Standard practice. Wise. Beck Greaves signed the receipt. I asked her to say that again. She did. Then she pulled the receipt from her files and handed it to me. It was time-stamped, countersigned, and filed. The Frontier Aid Corps had done its job. The Guild Coordination Office had received accurate data, and Greaves had sent my party in anyway, with a threat level he knew was wrong. Why? That part took longer to figure out, but the answer, when it came, was almost insultingly simple. Greaves had been lobbying for a promotion to the Guild's Central Command. The Ashenmoor region was strategically important. Clearing it would have been a major feather in his record, but the honest threat assessment would have required a full A-class deployment, which was expensive, slow to organize, and would have involved oversight from Central Command, oversight that would have reduced Greaves's personal credit for the operation. So he downgraded the rating, sent a strong but undersized party, and gambled on us pulling it off. We didn't. And when we didn't, he wrote the failure as mine. The third fiancé arrived at 4 in the afternoon, and this one was different. Serena Vale was not from a noble family. She was a guild liaison, a mid-rank administrative officer who coordinated between field teams and the coordination office. She and I had been engaged quietly, without family involvement, because it was ours. Not a contract. Not a political arrangement. Ours. She was also Greaves's direct subordinate. Serena walked in and didn't look at the outpost hall or the crates or the mud on the floor. She looked at me. And then she looked at Ren. Then she looked back at me. I need to talk to you, Aiden. Just you. Ren picked up her clipboard and walked out without a word. No annoyance, no possessiveness. She just left because the moment didn't require her and she had work to do. I've never met anyone with a cleaner sense of when to stay and when to go. Serena sat down. She was shaking. I know about the Ashenmoor data. I know you know. She flinched. Serena, you worked in the coordination office. You processed field intelligence. The Frontier Corps survey on Ashenmoor would have come across your desk before it reached Greaves. You saw the numbers. Silence. You knew the threat level was wrong before my party entered that dungeon. More silence. And you didn't tell me. Her voice broke. He told me it was being handled. He said the assessment was under review and a revised briefing would be issued before deployment. I believed him. And then the mission launched and you didn't say anything. I was scared, Aiden. He's my commanding officer. If I contradicted him publicly, 2 people almost died. I know. I lost my license. I lost everything. I know. And you ended our engagement 3 days after the suspension. You didn't even tell me why. You just said it wasn't working. She covered her face with her hands. I watched her shoulders shake and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger, but exhaustion. The bone-deep tiredness that comes from realizing that every single person who should have stood between you and disaster either stepped aside or actively pushed you toward it. And the reasons were always the same. Fear. Ambition, convenience, self-preservation. Celeste left because her family's reputation mattered more than the truth. Margot left because her mother's opinion was louder than her own heart. Serena left because she couldn't face the guilt of what she'd failed to do, and it was easier to disappear than to explain. 3 engagements, 3 women, 3 versions of the same cowardice wearing different faces. Why are you here now, Serena? She lowered her hands. Her eyes were red. Because the guild opened an internal investigation into Greaves last week. Someone submitted the original Frontier Corps survey data with the coordination office receipt. His signature, the timestamp, all of it. The investigation is going to overturn the Ashenmoor report. Your license will be reinstated. Someone submitted the data, I repeated, anonymously. All through the Corps' liaison channel. I looked at the door Ren had walked through 5 minutes ago. Someone submitted the data through the Corps' liaison channel. Ren hadn't told me. She hadn't mentioned it. She'd just done it. The same way she'd loaded me into her wagon, driven 14 hours, and dropped me at a healer's clinic. No announcement, no agenda, just action, applied where it was needed. Serena was still talking. Aiden, when the report is overturned, your status will be restored. The guild will issue a formal correction. Your record will be clean. And I want you to know that I'll testify about what I saw, about what Greaves told me. I'll put it on the record. You'll testify now, I said. Now that an investigation is already open. Now that someone else already submitted the evidence. Now that it's safe. But she didn't answer. 3 months ago, one sentence from you would have prevented all of this. You could have told the review board what you knew. You could have told me. You could have gone to the core and confirmed their data. Instead, you left. And now you're here offering to be brave after someone else already did the hard part. Aiden, thank you for coming. You should testify. It's the right thing to do. I stood. But we're not going to be anything again. Not because I'm angry. Because I finally understand the difference between someone who acts when it's dangerous and someone who acts when it's safe. And I can't unsee that. She left. The outpost was quiet. Evening light coming through the windows. Dust in the air. Ren came back inside carrying a sack of grain over one shoulder, set it on the stack, or wiped her forehead with her wrist and said, 3 old friends in one day. You're popular. You submitted the survey data to the guild. She stopped, looked at me. The investigation, the evidence that triggered it, that was you. She pulled off her work gloves 1 finger at a time, slow, deliberate. Then she said, the data was accurate. The guild deserved to have it. It wasn't about you. It was about me. It was about the system being wrong. I'd have submitted it for anyone. But you submitted it for me. She held my gaze for a long time. There was nothing soft in her expression. No blushing, no trembling hands, no dramatic confession. Just the steady, clear-eyed look of a woman who had seen someone get destroyed by a lie and decided to put the truth on the table, not because she loved him, but because leaving it buried was something she couldn't live with. Ren, I said, when you picked me up off that way station floor, was that before or after you submitted the data? After. So you'd already started the process before you even found me. I filed the survey data the day after your suspension was announced, when I saw the Ashenmore entry in the guild's public failure log and matched it to the intelligence we'd flagged. It took about 10 minutes to confirm that Greaves had buried our report. I filed the correction through our liaison office, attached the receipt, and went back to my route. She paused. Finding you on the road 2 weeks later was not part of the plan. What was the plan? There wasn't one. I drive supply routes. You were on a supply route. You were sick. I had medicine in the wagon. Yeah, she looked at me with something that might have been frustration. You keep trying to make this into a story about you, and it's not. I did my job. The data was wrong. I fixed it. You were hurt. I helped. Those are separate things. Are they, She didn't answer. She picked up her clipboard, checked a box, and walked to the next stack of crates. And that's the thing about Ren that none of the others would ever understand. She doesn't orbit people. She doesn't position herself for advantage or angle for connection. She exists in the world like a fixed point. Steady, visible if you're paying attention, invisible if you're not. She didn't save me to win me. She saved me because saving people is what her hands do. I didn't notice her for years. I walked past her hundreds of times while I was busy being engaged to women from important families and running missions that would advance my rank. She was the person loading the wagons, the person checking the manifests, the person who flagged the data that should have prevented Ashenmore, data that was ignored because it came from a supply runner, not a commander. The system didn't fail because the information wasn't there. It failed because the people with power didn't listen to the people who actually touched the ground. The investigation will take weeks. My license will probably be restored. Greaves will face a tribunal. Celeste's father will send another letter, this time offering the original engagement terms, not adjusted ones. Margot's mother will encourage another visit. Serena will testify and feel virtuous about it. And the story people tell about Aiden Voss will change again. It'll shift from the adventurer who failed to the adventurer who was betrayed. I'll be a sympathetic figure. People will buy me drinks. Old colleagues will shake my heads and say they always knew something was off about the Ashenmore report. They didn't. None of them did. None of them looked. None of them checked. One person checked. One person who had no obligation to me, no engagement contract, no family alliance, no political motivation. One person who saw wrong data in a system, corrected it, and then, separately, coincidentally, without any expectation of gratitude, found a dying man on the road and drove him to safety because she had a wagon and he needed one. It's evening now. Ren is outside, securing the wagon tarps for tomorrow's route. Yet I can see her through the window, pulling ropes tight, checking axle bolts, moving with the kind of efficiency that comes from doing the same thing 1,000 times, and never once thinking it was beneath her. Tomorrow, I'll ride with her on the supply run. Not because I'm her partner or her project or her rescued stray, because there are villages that need medicine, and I know how to plan a route, and she could use a second pair of hands. The three women who were once engaged to me will continue trying to re-enter my life as the story changes in my favor. They'll frame it as regret, growth, timing, fate, and maybe they do feel something real. I'm not cruel enough to say they don't. But what they feel now is not what they felt when it mattered. When it mattered, they left, quickly, cleanly, without looking back. Ren never left because Ren was never trying to arrive. She was just there, doing her work, telling the truth, driving the road. I walked past her for years. I won't do that again. Tomorrow, the wagon leaves at dawn. The route goes north, through the pass, into the villages that no one important ever visits. Ren will drive. I'll manage the manifest. We'll deliver medicine to people who need it and be back by nightfall. It's small. It's ordinary. It's the kind of work no one writes songs about. But I've had my name on banners. I've had 3 engagement rings and a guild rank and a reputation that could open any door in the capital. And none of it, not one piece of it, was there when I was lying on a cold floor with a fever, alone, discarded, written off. A woman with calloused hands and a wagon full of bandages was there. Well, that's the whole story. That's the version no one in the capital knows, and I'm not sure I'll ever bother telling them. Let them believe whatever they want. Let the story change with the investigation. Let the 3 fiancés rewrite history to include themselves in whatever version sounds best. I know what happened. Ren knows what happened. And tomorrow, at dawn, we drive north. That's enough.